first time that's happened in that game. In different places, as part of the group wanted to secretly search a church while the other group was like, one, to act as a diversion again, but also they wanted to question a particular NPC. So like, oh, well, we can do both and, serve this dual purpose if we do it by splitting the party.
I'm Nerdarchy Ted.
And I'm Nerdarchy Dave. Welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds, by nerds.
All right, so what are we going to talk about today, Dave?
Well, how many times have you heard never split the party in your Dungeons & Dragons game?
I mean, it's pretty much all the time. People are always, like, oh, no, you can't do this, you can't do that.
It's a trope at this point, right? Don't split the party.
Don't split the party. I mean, there's things where, like, there's group names that have even come off of it because it's been said so often.
Yeah, I think like there's a podcast name after that and probably other things as well. Why do you think this advice is typically given?
So this is a tough situation. And I know every group dynamic is going to be different. So if this does not apply to you, don't worry. And if this is exactly your group, we're not trying to call you out specifically. It's just,
except for you right there. I'm trying to call you out. Just that one person right there.
Oh my God. So if you've got a group where a player goes off the rails or a GM is somewhat adversarial, splitting the party can go poorly, where one player takes more than their fair share at the table. If the other players are not invested in what's going on with whoever's controlling the action at the time, if they're not invested in that, they can become like disenchanted or disconnected from the game. That leads to side chatter and, playing of games. And it can lead to disproportional amounts of time for the players, with focus, as well as potentially disproportional rewards as well.
Yeah, also I would say single resolution players are problematic for splitting the party as well. And when I say single resolution players, I don't just mean the players, the GM is a player as well. And if your group of players only believe there's one way to solve an encounter, and then that is to fight it, and your GM also is setting up counters, or the only way through them is to fight your way through, then splitting the party generally is not going to work very well for you because the GM has probably prepared these encounters, for the whole party, and splitting your resources is going to make it very difficult, if not impossible, to overcome these challenges.
And that's why it generally is out there to don't split the party, because if this is the only way through and it's properly prepared for everyone, then how are you as a lone party or a portion of the party going to be able to survive what was designed for everybody?
Yeah, so let's get into, is this actually good advice?
So I feel that is wholly dependent upon the group. And I don't feel that there are, that it's going to apply to everybody, but there are plenty of groups who say, nope, it's just fine. We can split the party. No big deal.
Yeah, I feel like there's two different things to look at, right? One is this good advice narratively, and is this good advice mechanically? Mechanically, yes, it's never going to be good advice because party full strength, all your resources together is going to make you stronger as a unit. But narratively is completely different. Sometimes you need to get more stuff done in a timely fashion in the game world than you could than is possible for the group, right? So if you have 4 tasks to get done and you have 4 players, it would be much quicker for each player to complete one of the tasks individually. Now there are challenges to that, and depending on what those tasks are, you might not be able to do it, but ultimately it is faster.
And that is tough. So like if you've got, I need to get an item from this room, I need to talk to this person, I need to locate something else and then fight this person here. Well, all right, so you've got a fight, a conversation, and possibly 2 skill checks. So the skill checks could literally take a minute and a half to 3 minutes, depending upon how many back and forth rolls are necessary. The conversation could take 5 to 10 minutes, depending upon how much information needs to travel back and forth. But the fight could last 45 minutes, knowing what we know about how fight scenes tend to take.
Yeah.
Now, a one-on-one fight taking 45 minutes, holy crap, that's a legendary fight, gonna take a while. But it still could be disproportional in the amount of time at the table. And again, see that aforementioned comment that those two people who just made a couple skill checks done in 3 minutes, having to sit there for 30 to 40 minutes while other people fight a combat, that could really be disheartening.
Yeah, and then also too, like, you know, narratively speaking, sometimes it makes sense to break off the party into smaller groups in half or whatever, just because some tasks are better suited to some players than others. And the characters themselves may not be interested in doing the thing, right? Like the warrior or the barbarian just might not be interested in going to the library and talking to the librarian to get this piece of information or a particular book. They, you know, the barbarian and the rogue, you know, and or the fighter, they might be far more interested in going to the brothel or the tavern in order to grill somebody there in order to get information. So narratively speaking as well, just certain things just make more sense for other characters to do.
Now, we have some experience in our games with, you know, actually splitting the party and how we might mitigate some of these situations. But before we go any further, if you like these videos, as well as all the awesome content over on nerdarchy.com, and you'd like to show us some love, why not come support us over on Patreon?
Articles like Bounty Hunting the Mandalorian Way in 5e D&D.
All right, so as I said, we've got some experience at splitting the party and how you can manage some of these, you know, problems like, you know, players not being engaged in what's going on because their character has gone off and done other things, or, you know, managing like connectivity with the party being split.
All right, so Scott Garrity has a YouTube channel, and he's run a bunch of games for us. He's been in a bunch of our games in the past, and he's used one of the most interesting, if not best, methods I've seen for splitting the party, keeping everyone engaged, and making it interesting. I believe it was during our first Star Wars game that he ran for us, where there was a mission that needed to be done, but not everybody was going to do it. So that players that were going to take part in that mission that weren't going to actually be playing their characters were given NPCs. They're given different, I think, mercenaries to play in order to take part in what was going on and not be sidelined, while the other main characters in the story were doing the thing.
And there was even a time where he was a player in my game where his character wanted to go off and do something else at the time, and he basically got hired on, again, as an NPC, and he came in as just a lackey. You know, he grabbed a stat block out of the monster manual. I forget what, like,
the veteran.
It was a veteran.
Yeah.
And you know, like in those moments, when you're just a generic NPC, you can still be like, okay, well, I'm going to put my character on hold for the moment. I'm going to play this guy. You can do some kind of, you know, investigating within the party. Like, oh, well, I'm this new guy. You know, tell me about yourself. Ask questions that, you know, maybe the other players at the table might want to know, but because you don't know the particulars, you can be like needly. You know, you've got these moments to be like, oh, well, maybe I can make a connection with these characters and then die spectacularly, so that impacts those character growth moments, because here's this NPC who we only knew for a short amount of time and they died and we couldn't save them.
Yeah, and I think in that case, he actually even took like an NPC that was already floating around in the game, and like, hey, can I play this person? Use this stat block, and like you said, it gives you an opportunity to explore the party dynamic from a different point of view that you wouldn't normally get to. So it creates some memorable and fun moments at the table.
Absolutely. But, you know, that's only one example, you know, one person's, you know, insertion. But we've also run a Monster of the Week game. And while the mechanics of Monster of the Week are different from D&D, the aspect of what happens at a table doesn't necessarily have to change what goes on when you decide to split the party.
Yeah, this was just definitely a case of, at various points, there were two objectives that you wanted to get done. One of them was actually even like, hey, we're going to create a diversion someplace else. I believe it was at the Alamo. It was, you guys were at the Alamo, and, you know, some of you needed to steal something from there. Davy Crockett's hat, of course, because they needed to resurrect the ghost of Davy Crockett for a reason. And the rest of you are like, well, we're going to create a diversion somewhere else at this museum in order to draw everyone away while this other thing gets done, right? So they're kind of working in tandem but separately, so they have different things going on. And it's not even the first time that that's happened in that game. You know, in different places, you know, as part of the group wanted to secretly search a church while the other group was like, one, to act as a diversion again, but also they wanted to question a particular NPC. So like, oh, well, we can do both and, you know, serve this dual purpose if we do it by splitting the party.
And this has become, you know, an almost staple within our Zoo Mafia game that we run here on the channel Tuesday nights. We're actually closing in on the end of the campaign. At the time of recording this, we've already had 10 episodes, so by the time this goes up, it could already be complete, so you could go watch all of it there and see the exact execution of this. But we have a 4-person party, and it has become, like I said, almost a staple that these two go this way and these two go this way, and it's not always the same dynamic, but it's been a lot of fun for us getting so much done.
You've also split that even further. You've split the party into two, and then the two would split individually. These have all happened during our games.
That absolutely happened. We did have at one point in time everybody, you know, loan sharking, as you will, you know, in their own location. You know, in session 10, I wound up doing a solo mission because it was like, well, again, see that aforementioned, we needed a diversion, a distraction. So the other 3 people were like, look, we're going to go out here potentially getting into trouble with the law so that, you know, Ted's character can go off and, you know, essentially plant evidence or put, you know, paper back, you know, in the admin office. It was like, all right, this is cool. This is fun. But, you know, in a game like Monster of the Week where things are a little bit faster on you know, turnaround, it's a lot easier to do, but you can still extrapolate those core mechanics into a situation like D&D and still have the fun, still have the connectivity, and still have the engagement of the players at the table.
All right, so let's talk about what does it take to enjoy splitting the party in your TTRPG, whether you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, Monster of the Week, or Zoo Mafia.
So I've seen, you know, times where you've had a simultaneous combat, and I've seen, like, you know, tables where there's a combat done on one battle grid and a combat done on the other battle grid, and it's done, you know, initiative count for the whole thing, and regardless of where the numbers fall, they're jumping back, the GM is jumping back and forth between 2 battles. It's a lot harder work on the GM to keep track of everything, but it can be fun, it can be well done.
It also basically keeps the flow of the game as it normally would be, and it doesn't change too much, right? There's not a whole lot of waiting.
Outside of combat, if you have a similar kind of, I'm going to bounce back and forth, and if you're not engaged in, like, in combat with any of the groups, you give a couple minutes here, you let something happen so that there's some advancement in the story, and then you bounce to the other group or to the next section, however you want to divide it, so that there is a constant rotation, and it's not, you know, one player or a group of players twiddling their thumbs for 20, 30 minutes.
I will say one of the things you can do as a player, you know, that isn't a party that's split, that isn't, you know, in the action right now, is try to be a player that enjoys the game that's going on outside of your character, right? Enjoy what the other players are doing, you know, enjoy, you know, watching them do the role playing, investigating, or combat, or whatever it is. You know, it's not for everybody, and this is more of a struggle for some people than others, but I think with our groups, we really enjoy that aspect, and we kind of like kick back. There are so many times that I run games on the channel for this particular group, and I'm just sitting there like this, and I haven't said anything for 10, 15 minutes because they're all just role-playing back and forth and doing stuff. And I think it really helps if you can let go as a player, whether you're the GM or a player at the table, and just enjoy the interactions that are happening. Now, as the GM, you do need to step in if the party is split, to go, okay, boom, we're gonna cut to this other scene and make sure it's not like everyone's waiting an hour before they get to do something. That's no good. I like to do 5 to 15 minutes depending on what's going on.
When you're on your waiting turn, if you want to call it that, if your group takes notes, you could take a turn of like, okay, well, I'm going to record what's going on here, so that number one, you become engaged. Number two, you get to record, the information that's happening, so that you can be able to fill in and ask questions or inquire, but more of the session gets put down so that the GM has those notes and the players have those notes at the same time. And that's very beneficial. We have a player in our group that is currently run by Dave, and for years he has been our note taker. And it's
become part of the DM prep at this point.
For both you and for me, when he did it for my game, where it was a scenario that it's super helpful. Like, oh my god, I really don't remember what happened. I took horrible notes last session. I think I've got 3 words written down. What the flip happened? And oh look, there's Dr. Kurt's notes, and here's everything that happened. Including lore and loot and what have you. It's like, man, this is fantastic.
Yeah, so and also another aspect of that, whether you're taking notes or not, is just like when the party comes back together, if you're paying attention to what happened and there's going to be a recap, you don't actually have to do the recap.
You could say, and I explain what happened, and then the story moves on, as opposed to, oh, well, I did this and I did that, and I convinced them this and I convinced them that. And it takes, a third of the time from what just happened to explain what happened. It's like, oh my word.
Now, if you want to create a role-playing scene from it, that's completely different. But
sure.
If it's just to convey the information, right, the information's already been kind of conveyed, and you can be like, boom, we've recapped, everyone's caught up, we move on.
Yes.
So there are definitely some things to keep in mind when you're splitting the party, and ways to make it better.
Now, if you're looking for some more 5th edition content you might want to add to your game, where it's possible that you might want to split the party, why not check out the Dark Path's Little Shop of Dark Delights? The 5th edition content in this book explores new, darker paths for adventurers to follow. Beginning down one of these dark paths leads to power, but at a perilous cost. Heroes of the Dark face insurmountable odds and challenging decisions, whether it's worth the cost to fight against such forces by tapping into the same source of insidious influence as their terrible foes. If you want to go to another plane of existence, Alondra Fayen can open the door for a price. You pick the location and she will wait for you for 3 days, going by the time of the destination place, rather than your home plane. She will charge you twice if you want her to hold the flow of time for you while you're gone. The modular location, Shop of Dark Delights, can show up anywhere, includes map and a D100 table to determine the price of admission, alchemical goods, 15 distinct artisanal and consumables with a variety of effects, new magic items, the Mask of Bastion, the Mask of Vexes, and the Mask of Wraths, as well as the Summoning Bell, an NPC, Alondra Fayen, based on the party animal CBG, as well as the new monster, the Dark Animental.
So let us know what you think about splitting the party. Give us your tips down in the comments below. Share them with the Nerdarchy community.
While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Go ahead and click on that notification bell. You want to.
Quick reminder, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays we drop new videos on the channel, so come on back. Can't wait till then. No worries, we've got you covered. Better Dungeons and Dragons dungeons for players and DMs alike here.
So until next time, stay nerdy.